I don't know where we'll be in Radina's, but I'm sure you'll be able to find us over at the Union. Secondly, every one of you should have gotten a reading with a little binder clip, right? And everybody get one of Islamic writings and scholarship. Okay, that's for Dr. Chipchey's 2 classes, 2 weeks, and he will be coming up after Dr. McCloskey, so we just went ahead and got those copied. They have 3-ring binder holes in them, so that if you want to put them in a binder, you can. Third, I'm going to pass around a thank you note. You already signed it, but I wrote a little thing on it saying DAS 300 Fall 17. And if you could just say thanks under that on the card, I'd appreciate you signing your name, because this class is all paid for, all the things that you get, the books, the readings, the professors as well. We all get a little stipend for this. All comes from the Redbud Foundation, and Dr. Glenn Swager is the person who heads that up, and I'll be sending that to him. And finally, at some point, we might have some refreshments coming in, and so if they'd be coming from something else we did across the way, and once we get them, you're welcome to have those. All right, so that all out of the way, this is Dr. Ben McCloskey.
Yo.
And he's from the Modern Languages Department. He heads up the Classics minor. He's an expert in Latin and Greek literature, and so I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Excellent. Hello. Hello.
Dr. Johnson, for future reference, could you let me know, like, what time you plan to actually get started with class?
Sure. Yeah. Well, we start right on time, so that's
Oh, okay. Because every time I walk in, I feel like I'm just 1 minute late.
No, you're just right on time. All right.
Well, it's a pleasure to meet all of you. And yes, as advertised, I'm Dr. McCloskey. Classics, Greek, Latin, etc. I was going to say something else. I don't remember. Okay, anyway, we're going to be talking this week and next week about 2 plays by Sophocles. The first is the Oedipus Tyrannos, and the other is the Antigone. And we're going to be using this as an opportunity to talk about a number of different aspects pertaining to these plays. But first, let's look that way. Because I want to start off with just a brief sort of introduction and context of what we're going to be talking about. So, a long time ago, in a place pretty far from here, in the beginning, sort of at the end of the 6th century BC, this popular, and by popular I mean people do it, not just rich people, popular institution quickly evolves over the course of a generation or 2 from like guys standing up during parties and giving poetic presentations into something that is on stage with something called actors and with a script written by playwrights. And it's not entirely clear, because it's a little bit too early historiographically, how this happened. But it did sort of get solidified in what it was around at the end of the 6th century BC, and it continues with significant changes that you guys don't really care about until the 2nd century CE. So theater in its first run had a good 800 years and then kind of drops out for the first part of the Middle Ages, again because it's very orientated on popular society and popular culture, and that changes drastically once the Middle Ages get going. What in the period of drama that we're looking at, plays had, and you guys don't have to write all this down, this will be posted on Canvas. Plays had 3 actors, and no more and no fewer than 3 actors. They're all men, Shakespeare style, or rather Shakespeare was ancient Greek style. And so that means that over the course of a play, who's playing what character and all of this will change as the needs of the play dictate. And so you might start with one actor being portrayed by, one actor portraying Creon, and then by the end of the play that actor is portraying Oedipus. They're backed up by a chorus. The chorus are teenaged boys. For them, it's something like a coming-of-age ceremony. It's one of the various options you have when you're like 17 through 19 to do a civic coming-of-age. You take a year, you help put together a civically funded play. The actors themselves were slaves, usually, or paid, which is, in the Athenian perspective, just about as bad as slavery. They have very weird standards about accepting salary. All of these are funded at public expense, and they happen in specific moments. So this isn't like where you have the McCain theater series going on all year. These happen at specific moments for specific reasons, which we'll talk about in a moment. During these festivals, an author would have a day, and there were usually 3 authors chosen for a festival. And so on that day, the author would put on 3 tragedies plus a satyr play. And these were ephemeral things. When drama was first created, these aren't written down, these aren't published, these aren't written to be performed more than once. These are things performed once and only once. And it's just the happenstance of, hey, this is a really popular play, that somebody bothered to write it down the next day, and that's why we have it. And they're almost all about myth exclusively. Athens was very interested in free speech, but playwrights weren't stupid. It's a dangerous thing to write poetry and to write plays about current events. So we're often talking about things pertaining to current events through allegory, through myth, all of this. One reason that the changing of actors doesn't matter that much is that on stage the actors and the chorus wore masks. So you would have different masks for different characters, and you would have different masks for characters with different facial expressions. So when they're happy, they've got one mask. They come on for the bad scene, they've got an unhappy mask, etc. These masks were made out of leather and were relatively light, but obviously, from our perspective, is how actors work. It's a little weird, right? Everybody's wearing masks on stage. This is, as you see here, the Theater of Dionysus. This is the first theater, basically. It's the first purpose-built theater. It was built and rebuilt and rebuilt. This has a very important, plays a very important role at the civic center of Athens. From the 6th century on, at its peak, it seated 18,000 guests, which is not shabby for a theater. My guess is McCain seats, what, 1,000, 2,000? It's pretty big. And what we see here is the theater as it was modernized in the 1st century CE by the Roman government. Is that? No, can't show. I'm going to walk over there and point. Oh, now things are talking. Go away, box. There we go. Oh, go. I hate you. There we go. Yes, that's true. So, obviously the audience would sit here. Here, which is called the orchestra, is where our orchestra sits, of course, but for them, this is where the play would take place. A lot's missing here, a lot's collapsed. There would have been a stage back here as well that the actors could have stood on, and then there would have been a large backdrop made out of stone that you'll see in a moment. Right next door is the Odeon of Herodes Atticus, which was built in 161 AD, and this is, another purpose-built theater right next door to the Theater of Dionysus. But you would have gotten you have an idea of what the theater would have looked like that this play was actually put on for the one and one only time. You have the stage, you have the orchestra. Of course, it's a modern orchestra now, so that's where the orchestra sits. This is where the Athens Chamber Orchestra puts on their summer series. It's wonderful. But you have the stone purpose-built backdrop, the Stene. You have, these would have all had nice fancy statues in them as well. So it's a really big, monumental construction that takes advantage of the hillside to really cram as many human beings in as possible. Here's the Theater of Dionysus. You can see where they've excavated the stone seating, and then there would have been earthen seating and bleacher section, essentially, all the way up the hill, which is how it could fit 18,000 people. And here you have the Theater of Dionysus, the Odeon of Herodes Atticus just next door. But theater, as I said, is for a purpose. It's not for entertainment. per se. It's not for fun per se. It is something that evolves and exists in a specific public religious context. There are 2 moments in the year that theater happens in Athens. The first is the winter festivals of Dionysus, and this is called the rural Dionysia because it happened in everybody's sort of rural town at different times during the winter. But the big one was the spring festival of Dionysus, the festival of the urban Dionysia, and this is the one that happens in the theater of Dionysus that I just showed you. And theater is intimately connected with who and what Dionysus as a god is. And he is the good and bad aspects of a lot of things. Wine, sex, violence, foreign and new, old and local, strange, beautiful, teenaged, free love, drama, civilization, writing, and literature. And you see him on the bottom left there. He's young. He's a young god. He's a new god. He's a teenage god. He doesn't have a beard. He's overtly sexual. He's sort of aggressive in his nudity. He's covered in vines. You see him in the second from the left. He's associated with Asia. And the myth is that he is from Greece, but family issues happen, so he ends up growing up in Asia and has this triumphal procession when he's on a chariot led by cheetahs, or leopards. Here I think we have a cheetah. Where he sort of returns to Greece in a chariot pulled by cheetahs. So he's scary, he's strange, he's new, he's very associated with sexuality, as you see on the second from the right. This is a statue honoring Dionysus from the island of Delos. Not only does it have a phallus on the top, but if you can see the delightful pun on the side, that is a rooster, of course, that's been turned into a phallus. And the pun works in English quite well. But he's violent and scary and terrifying as well. And you see on the bottom right, Lycurgus, a mythological character who crosses him and is torn to pieces by animate vines. So Dionysus has a lot going on, all of which are involved to greater or lesser degrees in his role in theater.
You see, I thought you were just mentally describing the picture of the leopards. I was taking down the notes. I looked up at the slide and thought, that's an ugly looking leopard.
Indeed. The rural Dionysia has theater, but not any that have been recorded. These start with a parade of phalloi. As you can see here, it's like Mardi Gras, but with penises. You have massive penis statues made out of wood and leather that you have a parade around. The parade ends with a big party, booze, drinking, dancing, singing. There are poetic competitions, there are musical competitions, and it's sort of informal, spur-of-the-moment dramatical performances. But what we're interested in is the city Dionysia. And I want to talk about this a little bit because it really emphasizes the civic context in which this happens. It's not, again, like us, where drama is a thing that the government doesn't do. Like the idea of the Kansas government putting on plays is kind of a weird one, right? But for them, this was fundamentally civic and public. Every year, 13 citizens in Athens were chosen at random. And this is how all Athenian government positions were chosen. They just pulled names out of a hat and, hey, you're the governor. Hey, you're the tax assessor. Hey, you're in charge of the plays this year. So they had 13 officials, and of course it has to be an odd number for tie-breaking, who were in charge or were paid for a year to organize this and coordinate it. The first day was another procession in honor of Dionysus, which ended with, again, flute competitions, poetry competitions, and a drunken party. Day 2, and again, really getting at the civic and public aspect of this, you had the announcement of what the plays were going to be for the next week. You had speeches of patriotic praise of people who had done good that year, both Athenian and foreign, like this foreign dude was really great to Athens and I want to praise him in a speech. Or this guy was great in his office this year, I think I need to praise him. You had a parade of orphans of war. So dead veterans, their kids got a parade during this day. And the judges of because this is a competition, it's not just fun, the judges for the rest of the week who judged the plays were chosen again by random. The next 3 days you had 3 playwrights put on their plays. and you had each of them gave 3 tragedies, and at the end of their day, they had a Seder play. And what a Seder play is, we'll come back to in a moment. So you had 3 days in a row, 3 playwrights putting on 4 plays a day, and the last couple of days you had comedies. Both in comedies and tragedies, you got first and second place awards. And these became, even though this is a very Athenian, very democratic thing, drama becomes wildly popular across the Mediterranean, at least the Greek-speaking Mediterranean, like overnight. And here we see from Sicily, like less than a generation later, a vase that is depicting various scenes from Euripides' Medea, which was put on in 431. This is a vase that's like cartoon style putting on the play. Here we see the murder of the king's daughter and Jason running to like save his wife who's dying. Here we have Medea cursing her. We have Medea murdering her children. We have Medea climbing on her serpent-drawn chariot. So we have scene after scene after scene. But you can really see this is not the myths. Because what can you see in the background here? What is this in the background?
The backdrop?
Yeah, this is the backdrop. This is the stone backdrop of the Theater of Dionysus. And here we have a scene from Iphigenia in Taurus, which was put on sometime between 414 and 412. So it hit a nerve, and everybody instantly started loving everything except Seder plays, which are weird. So as I said, they put on 3 dramas a day, and then they end in the Seder play. And the idea of a Seder play is take a moment of mythology, and what happens if there were a bunch of drunken, naked satyrs hanging out there? And that's the play. It's weird. The reason, of course, is that what have the entire audience been doing over the 3 dramatic plays, sitting in the audience? What have they been doing? Drinking. So this is the one that ends the day. Everybody's drunk. Everybody needs some jokes. Everybody needs a little sexiness. And it gets weird. So the one Seder play that survives is the Cyclops by Euripides. And literally the plot is, what if when Odysseus washes up on the beach and meets the Cyclops, there are a bunch of drunk satyrs there. And they cause trouble. It's almost like slapstick. It's a little like comedy. It's obviously not a genre that survives. It's weird and very Athenian. It's not tragedy. It's not comedy. There's not really a resolution. It's just, here's a scene with some satyrs and a famous mythological character. But, oh yes, I'm sorry, Elliot, yes.
Origin-wise?
Yes, stick your hands up if I don't see you.
Does that have anything to do with satire?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Again, not entirely clear what the relationship is, but satire comes from Seder, and satire, as it emerges as a sort of mature genre in the Roman Empire, is not that different than satire today. But again, its origins are a little difficult. So, what we're going to be reading and talking about are 2 plays by Sophocles this week and next week. Sophocles lived from, well, there you go, 468 to 406 BC. He was a professional playwright. This was, again, a civic paid position. This was something people did as a career. He wrote more than 120 plays. We have 7. As I said, these are ephemeral things. Plays are not written to be recorded. Plays are not written down. They are things that are done once and you move on from. It's just happenstance that people memorized them and wrote them down the next day for really good plays. He was one of the 3 big ones, right? We have Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides. He is generally considered the medium one, right? He's not the oldest, he's not the youngest, he's not the most religious, he's not the most atheistic. He's very interested in humans and the relationship of humans and gods, but he goes about it in a very, as we're going to see, a very interesting way. He wins a lot. 18 years out of 30, he is a winner in the city Dionysia. He has other civic positions. He's a general, and he's maybe a priest as well. So he's a very connected and politically involved guy. But the weird thing is, as I said, we have 3 plays a day, and then the Seder play. What we're reading with the Oedipus Tyrannos first, and then the Antigone next week, you would expect these to come from one trilogy, but they don't. The Antigone, even though we're reading it second, was written 12 years before the Oedipus Tyrannos and the Oedipus Tyrannos, which kind of ends the story, he actually never even performs. He writes it, and it's performed after his death. He dies in 406, and it's not performed until his kid puts it on in 401. So one thing to keep in mind, to use, again, a comic book term, the Antigone and the Oedipus Tyrannos are not in the same continuity. These are plays on the same myths and plays on the same characters, but they're not in the same continuity. So that's something we need to think about as we are sort of making our way through these. Anyway, that's my introduction. I don't have anything more for that. I'm going to mute it. How do I mute it? Let's say that. There we go. Got it. Okay, so, yes, Elliot, please.
I
Yes,
don't mean to sound like sassy.
please. Sassy, sass away.
Okay, why are these considered primary texts if, like, Sophocles thought this up, but he didn't write this? Somebody else wrote this down from memory, and then it was translated, and then it was probably translated. So is it still, or is it more secondary, or, like, where does it lay on that spectrum?
I think it's primary. Because it's, Sophocles wrote it down.
He did.
He did. Like, over the course of the year, as he's writing and rewriting it, he's writing it down himself because he's got to give notes, he's got to give dialogue, he's got to give all of this stuff to the actors, right? That said, he doesn't publish what he's written. Somebody else writes it down subsequently.
Okay.
Yes. So this both is and isn't what Sophocles did. It's somebody's recording of what Sophocles did, but in that sense, it's like, is a YouTube video of somebody playing a song in a bar, that both is and isn't the production of the musician, right?
Yeah.
And that's sort of what we're dealing with here. All right, other questions and thoughts before we get going? Andrew.
Yeah, so are these plays, do they have, like, traditional directors, or were the plays just, like, given to the actors and said, here, you go?
Sophocles is director and playwright and choreographer and everything.
Okay.
Yeah. And of course he has assistants as well. Like, he's not the only person making a career out of this. All right, so, yes, Andrew? Oh, two Andrews right next to each other. Okay.
Yes. This is Andrew L. I'm Andrew H. So you can call me Drew.
Okay.
Your preference. I'm just wondering, when they were performing these plays, were there were there? I'm presuming there were different scenes in the performances. How did they transfer from scene to scene or segue?
Just leave stage. I mean, you don't have house lights you can bring down, but you just leave stage. So it's a little less formal than like the curtain dropping or something like that.
Or like a new backdrop or yeah.
Right, because they don't have the backdrops, because they have the same standard backdrop for each play, because the theater doesn't change. And they have, various things that are referred to as like the house, or you can point at the one little roof and like that's the castle and all of this. But they don't have like painted backdrops in the sense that you would in a modern theatrical production.
Okay. And also, I think something I was thinking of when you were mentioning, what was it? The Circle of Dionysus? Is that the name of the spring festival?
The City Dionysus. City Dionysus here, yeah.
I seem to remember reading in like an article or two that Dionysus sort of met his fate in an ironic way, or was somebody like him. He ended up giving a performance, and people would show their gratitude to him by like throwing their coats onto the stage.
I am not familiar with that. No. Okay. Other questions? Good. Okay. Oh, yes. Megan.
Well, would it take, is it too long of an explanation to get into why it wasn't good to get paid, or why that was like a sticky...
Oh, no, that's fine. Athenians, I can do a 2-minute spiel on this. Athenians are Democrats with a small d. They are believers in and they organize themselves around democracy. Not in the sense that we mean it, where everybody gets a vote, but in the sense that democracy is meant to be an expression of the will of specifically the demos. And the demos is not the rich, not the powerful, but basically the poor suckers like everybody in this room, right? It's supposed to be a governmental form that makes us powerful. And as a side effect of that, any infringement upon an individual's freedom, which includes things that we think of as normal, like giving up, exchanging moments of your life in exchange for a salary, are unacceptable infringements upon our will, right? So the fact that we have bosses and we do things for our bosses in exchange for salary for the Athenians is fundamentally undemocratic. And so the way they organize their society is under, there's not really an equivalent, right? Basically anybody who wanted a public job could have one. And if you don't have an estate, if you don't have farms, if you don't have a way of sustaining yourself, you can go be a juror. You can go put your name in the hats to be chosen as a governmental official. You can be, street sweeper for the year, and they'll pay you a decent salary because they tax the rich so much.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the 2-minute version of that. Yes. Okay. So, Oedipus. We open. You guys are gonna be talking a lot. I'm gonna make you talk. Always talking. I don't want to talk. I hate talking. I like when you guys talk. So, in the beginning, how does the play open? Yo.
There's a big plague.
Yes, there's a big plague. And how does Thebes? Because of course we're not in Athens, even though this is a play being performed in the theater of Dionysus in Athens. It's not set in Athens. How does Thebes respond to this? How does Thebes deal with their plague? Like, what are their initial attempts to deal with the plague? Who are the various groups we see meeting and interacting at the beginning?
Priests and the king.
The priests and the king. Who are the priests speaking for?
Zeus.
Hmm?
They're priests of Zeus.
The priests of Zeus, but who are they beseeching Oedipus to help? Yeah, so the priests are there helping, sort of speaking for the common people. So we've got Oedipus, and what's his job?
He's the king.
He's not the king. What's his technical title? What's the name of the play?
He's a tyrant.
He's a tyrant. What is a tyrant? It's like a king, but not a king. What's the difference between a tyrant and a king? Yes, Andrew.
A tyrant is someone who almost has the power struck, like, he's in the same position of leadership as a king would be, except he rules with an iron fist, almost with the anarchy.
But is that how Oedipus comports himself during this play?
I think that, like, what I thought was so weird about it, I don't know if this is what you're looking for, but, they, like, worship him. Like, they think he's, like, ordained by the gods to rule, and he has this all-consuming power as opposed to, like,
Okay, before we come back to the Tyrant King thing, what's Oedipus's backstory that we sort of get hints of? Jacob.
What, well, I mean, he showed up to Thebes, like, just as the previous king had been murdered, and no one knows who killed him. That's kind of like the whole point. But so they're like in like panic because they don't have a leader, and this guy shows up suddenly and he solved the Sphinx's riddle. So they're like, this guy knows.
You're sort of bearing the lead here. Tell me about the Sphinx.
What the Sphinx that was standing outside Thebes, and it wouldn't let people enter unless they could.
And what's the Sphinx?
It's like what? It's a body of a lion, head of a person.
A huge horrible monster. So he kills a huge horrible monster, and what do they do in exchange?
They give him complete power over the city.
They make him leader. And that is actually the difference between a king and a tyrant. For the Greeks, it's how they came to power.
Oh, because it wasn't like passed down.
Kings inherit the throne. Tyrants get the throne some other way. And we can see from this clearly how the modern term tyrant comes about, because tyrants are, they do violent things to get power, right? But for Greeks, tyrant's not really a problematic term. It just means somebody who didn't inherit the throne from his dad. So, they worship him, somebody says. Okay, wait. So the people, the common people and the priests go to Oedipus to solve the problem. There's this horrible plague. How does Oedipus treat the common people? Like, how, as you know, you're opening the book and reading for the first time. What kind of leader does Oedipus come across as, Heather?
He says that you guys have problems, but my problems are worse because I'm worrying about all of you and my own problems, and he really makes it sound like, oh, I really care about all of you. This really helps me so much personally.
Oh, so you think he's putting on a nice facade? You think he's not a good king or a good leader?
Well, I didn't say that. But just,
Okay.
I think he may mean it genuinely, but he seems very just.
Does he
full
come
of
across
himself.
as sincere or insincere at the beginning? Like if he were sincere?
Mm-hmm.
Sincere? And what does he do to solve this problem?
He sent this person to basically get really high and predict the future.
That's not quite how it works, but yeah, you're on the right track. No, sent. Who did he send?
Creon.
And what's Creon's relation to Oedipus?
Brother-in-law.
Brother-in-law / we find out later. Well, uncle maybe. But what does Creon say? What does Creon say the political relationship is between him and Jocasta and Oedipus?
They're all
They
equal.
share power.
They're all equal. So it's not just his brother-in-law, but his co-king. So he sends his co-king to Delphi, where Apollo's oracle is, and he says, well, I hope Creon comes back soon, because he's going to tell us what to do, because Apollo is going to tell Creon what to do. So far, on our opening pages, so good. Any problems with Oedipus that emerge right away?
He's kind of narcissistic.
How so? Tell me more.
In the chorus plots, I guess he's not really the one saying it. In the chorus plots, though, they keep creating him to the kings. But we do way too false of men, the blah blah blah, the thing with the Sphinx. Perhaps you have the voice of God and all this stuff, and Oedipus doesn't deny it. He's not like, I'm not the voice of God. He's like, yeah, I am. And then later it develops more. He's like, yeah, I bet you gods.
says that too. He says, "Here I am myself. You all know me. The world knows my fame. I'm Oedipus."
Good, okay. So he's a little full of himself, but what awesome things has he done?
The Sphinx.
He killed a monster and was made tyrant of a city. I mean, of anybody who feels impressed with themselves, he's kind of got some justification there. But I see what you're saying, Elliot.
I don't know if I just like am dumb and don't understand reading, but it's like
I doubt it.
he seems to have like amnesia
How so?
because he doesn't know what was up. Like he seems very like
What are you pointing at? What are you thinking about?
okay. Well, I mean, like spoiler alert. He doesn't remember his parents, who his parents are. So like that's just weird to me. Like did he have a concussion or?
Well, no, he's got weird memory issues, and we're gonna be talking about this. He absolutely has weird memory issues. Okay. Creon, Heather.
How long has he been king?
That's a very good question. How long has he been king?
Because like he has children, and they all are of sufficient age.
With Jocasta.
Yeah, with Jocasta.
Yeah. How long has he been in Thebes? How long? He asks Creon later, and we don't get a satisfactory answer. How long has Laius been dead?
I want to say like 7 years or something.
7 years?
But probably older because the sons are like established.
Yes. Okay. We're not going to see his kids on stage until the second half,
Yeah.
but we're going to see that they're not old enough to speak, or at least they don't speak.
Oh, all of his kids?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So maybe they're kids. Maybe they don't seem like they're teenagers. So he's been there for less than 10 years. But this is an important point. There's a lot going on in this play that rests upon unexamined assumptions that we're going to be working with. There's a lot going on here. So, Creon appears. And what does Creon appear to say? Creon returns from Delphi. And what does he say? What does he say to Oedipus?
Something kind of like you have to get rid of the root of the problem.
You're skipping ahead. You're absolutely right. But what's the first thing Creon says to Oedipus? There! And Oedipus has just been saying, Creon's going to come here and solve all of our problems. And Creon walks on stage and says,
Do you want me to tell you here, or do you want to go in private and be told? Was that it? Or
yeah,
like-
you're absolutely right. Creon comes on stage and says, oh, buddy, you want to hear this out here, or you want to hear this in the palace? What kind of impression does that create?
Not a great thing. Not good news.
Now, Y'all know what prophecy he's about to say. What about that's problematic or difficult or weird?
Sleeping with his mom.
Well, but nobody knows that, right? Right?
That the model may be in the town.
That the murderer may be in the town. That there's something that the people don't want to hear in what Creon has to tell Oedipus. It's a weird first thing. And Oedipus says, in reference to Creon's like, let's go talk in the palace privately. What does he say?
Let them hear it.
Let them hear it. They're my people. There's nothing that you can say that I don't want them to hear. Right? And what's Creon's prophecy? What's the prophecy that Creon relates then? Yes, Elliot.
Drive the corruption from the land. Don't harbor it any longer. Pass all cure. Don't nurse it in your soil. Root it out.
Mm-hmm. That's what Delphi says, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what does that prophecy mean? Yes, Apollo commands this. Drive the corruption from the land. Don't harbor it any longer. Past all cure. Don't nurse it in your soil. Root it out. What does that prophecy mean? Jacob.
The problem.
Man, 2 Jacobs, 2 Andrews? Okay, go ahead.
The problem is like within their city, and they need to find a way to get rid of it.
The problem's within our city, we need to get rid of it. That's what Apollo says. It's pretty straightforward, it's clear, it's obvious what does that mean? Well, in fact, it's so unobvious, Oedipus's question is, how can we cleanse ourselves? What rights? What's the source of the trouble? So what is Apollo's prophecy? What does Apollo's prophecy not say?
Who it is specifically?
Or what the corruption is? What does Creon say? Banish the man, or pay back blood with blood. Murder sets the plague storm on the city. Who says that?
Creon?
Who doesn't say that?
Apollo / Delphi.
How can we tell, looking at this text, the difference between those two? So, what has Creon returned to do? The Apollo says we've got to get rid of the corruption. And what does Creon say? It's this murder that happened a while ago. Does that mean this is the truth? Can we trust what Apollo says because it's a play? Can we trust what Creon says? Oedipus then says, whose murder? Whose fate does Apollo bring to light? Creon says, our leader, my lord, was once a man named Laius, before you came and put us straight on course. Who's saying this? Is Apollo? No. So wait, what does Apollo say that the plague is?
Corruption.
Corruption. Who turns Oedipus onto murder?
Creon.
Creon. Interesting. Oedipus says, I know, or so I've heard. I never saw the man myself. Well, he was killed, and Apollo commands us now. He could not be more clear. Okay, when anybody says this is painfully obvious, you stupid idiot, that means it's not obvious. Something weird's going on here. Pay the killers back, whoever is responsible. Okay. How many people in Creon's first statement committed murder? How many in his second statement committed murder?
Multiple.
All right. Keep that in mind. We've got discrepancies in the story already. Where on earth are they? Where to find it now? The trail of ancient guilt so hard to trace. Here in Thebes, he said. Whoever or whatever is sought for can be caught, you know. Whatever is neglected slips away. Oedipus wants to know about the murder, about Laius' murder, because of course, this is the problem that Oedipus has to solve. And Creon tells him a little bit about it. What's the one thing we know for sure Oedipus hears from Creon about the murder of Laius?
That he was more.
He was murdered by...
Someone in Thebes.
That's not what Creon says. Creon says the one concrete piece of data we have.
Isn't it basically he's dead?
He's dead, but...
Some stuff
He was murdered on the way to see the oracle.
There are thieves. There's a band of people.
The one thing we know is that there was one survivor from Laius' team. He ran away, and he said Laius was murdered by a pack of thieves. And that is the one thing we know. All right. Well, aside from the fact that Creon's already contradicted himself, what does this mean if that's the one thing we know that we already know can't possibly happen?
Someone's lying.
Well, somebody's definitely lying. But where are we, since we all know how Oedipus Tyrannos ends, what are we 100% confident of? We're going to find out by the end of this play.
Oedipus killed
Killed
Lies.
Laius.
Exactly right. So we know that, but wait, who killed Laius?
Oedipus.
A band. All right. We're on a detective play here, as Oedipus himself is. The point of this play, well, there are many points of this play, but one thing we need to figure out while reading this play is who murdered Laius. Because we all know by the end of this play that Oedipus is going to convict himself of murdering Laius. But that doesn't mean that's actually what happened. And we have one massive problem, even starting. The one thing we know is that a band of thieves killed Laius. And Oedipus, for whatever he is, he's not a band of thieves. So, scene 2. Moving on a little bit. We have the choral interlude, in which the chorus kind of reacts obliquely to everything that's just happened. And then Oedipus emerges onto the stage. And what does Oedipus, in his second opening speech, he started off with the opening speech saying, "My people, I love you, I'm going to take care of you." He's emerged to say now what?
Let me grant your prayers.
Sorry?
Let me grant your prayers.
Let me grant your prayers.
Yeah.
By doing what? What does he want to hear from the people?
What they know.
He wants to hear from them what they know. And, where is this? This is page 171.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
If the murderer is essentially a stranger or not from around Thebes, he's gonna chuck up a bit of coin as a reward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I will give him a handsome reward and lay up gratitude in my heart for him besides. Tell me who it is so we can make the plague go away. If you keep silent, if anyone panicking, trying to shield himself or friend or kin, rejects my offer, then hear what I will do. I order you, every citizen of the state where I hold throne and power, banish this man, whoever he may be. Never shelter him, never speak a word to him, never make him partner to your prayers, your victim burned to the gods. Never let the holy water touch his hands. Drive him out, each of you, from every home. He is the plague, the heart of our corruption, as Apollo's oracle just revealed to me. So I honor my obligations. I fight for the god and for the murdered man. So, how does Oedipus then respond to this news from Creon?
He's really like
He's really...
shaking his fists and
Yeah.
just like he's like, oh, I gotta get the murder out.
Why is he so worked up? Because he comes on stage and he's worked up. Anybody who knows anything, tell me. I will give you a fortune and a reward. Let's drive him out. We'll find him. We'll get rid of him. We'll save this town. Why is he so worked up?
Well, like I think part of it might be like, am I next? But then also there's
Why do
this
you think
whole-
that?
Well, because he's got this whole super creepy misogynistic monologue about how he took the other king's wife, who shares their seed,
Mm-hmm.
which like are women just property? Like what the heck? But I'm sorry.
To Oedipus, kind of. No, to Oedipus, kind of. We need to think about this. Keep saying words.
I feel like he thinks like my position is no longer infallible.
Why is he feeling insecure?
Well, because somebody killed the king, and he's like.
And somebody murdered the king
And they're still
got
on
away
the
with
town.
and got away with it. Why does he think? Why does he say? Why did they get away with it? What did Thebes not do?
Investigate properly.
Thebes didn't investigate when the last tyrant got his throat cut in the countryside. All of a sudden, you're absolutely right. Oedipus is like, we've really got to solve this right now. We've really got to solve it. Because what are the things pushing him to solve it? His own safety,
The people.
the people. Because what does Oedipus want? More than anything else, he tells us at the beginning of this play.
No more plague.
No more plague. This is a play about a plague. Remember that every moment. This is a play about eliminating a plague. Yes? Yes? Oh, I thought you had...
No,
Okay.
I was like scratching my hand with my book.
Good to know. Okay. Thank you. So, he emerges and he says, let's do it. Let's get rid of this. But I am the king now. I hold the throne that he held then. possess his bed, and a wife who shares our seed. Why, our seed might be the same. Children born of the same mother might have created blood bonds between us. Right, this is creepy and misogynistic. Why is he emphasizing that his semen and his wife's first husband's semen have both touched his wife? It's kind of weird, yes. Why is he doing that?
So when the prophecy comes up later on, it's like, oh, look at that.
Nah, the plot does not count.
Okay.
What is he emphasizing here? Hey, it's weird to say, we've both had sex with the queen. Why is he saying that?
Because it's a sign of power.
It's a sign of power? Sign of legitimacy, right?
Mm.
He replaced a king who inherited the throne. And he's married to the queen. But what's he? He's a tyrant. He did not inherit this throne, right? So he's got to prove his legitimacy, which is easy enough because, again, how did he get the throne?
Sphinx and
Yeah,
people.
slew a monster. Great. That's pretty good props for a king or for a tyrant. But he feels really insecure because even the last guy who was a king, nobody did a thing. Not even his wife did a thing. Not even his brother-in-law did a thing when he got murdered. So I will fight for him as if he were my father. Stop at nothing. Search the world to lay my hands on the man who shed his blood. The son of Labdacus, descended from Polydorus, Cadmus of old and Agenor, founder of the line. Their power and mine are one. What does he think is going on? What's he already thinking happened to Elias?
Conspiracy.
A conspiracy of who?
Creon.
Maybe Creon? Maybe somebody in Thebes. His first reaction was, oh, there's no way a band of thieves could have done this. Somebody had to pay them, and that somebody had to be a Theban. Right? He's thinking political conspiracy. He's not thinking anything fancy and highfalutin like prophecies and all of this stuff, right? Because why? A king was murdered. Why did kings get murdered?
Politics.
Politics. It's all about politics, and that's where Oedipus's mind is. Politics, politics, politics. So, he speaks, and he speaks, and he swears that they're going to find the person. And the leader says, the leader of the people, this priest says, this is page 174, in the grip of your curse, my king, I swear I'm not the murderer, I cannot point him out. As for the search, Apollo pressed it on us. He should name the killer. What does that mean?
Apollo should be able to tell them who it is.
But what does that mean? How does you can't just snap your fingers and Apollo shows up.
They're gonna have to go talk to an oracle.
Where?
At Delphi.
Okay. How could this entire play be resolved right now?
They go to Delphi.
All they have to do is go to Delphi. What does Oedipus, instead of going to Delphi, start doing instantly as soon as he gets this prophecy?
Get Tyreus.
Sorry?
To,
Oh no, even before he summons Tiresias. How does Oedipus want to solve this calamity, this catastrophe?
Oh, talk to the people. He wants to like root it out from the source.
He wants to play detective.
Yeah.
So instead of going to the gods, instead of being this like pious man, right, and going to Delphi, he is going to solve it himself. And the people are saying, why don't you just go to Delphi? They'll tell you who the murderer is, right? And he says, quite right. But to force the gods to act against their will, no man has the power. What? How would going to Delphi be to force Apollo to act against his will? What is Oedipus thinking?
He wants to be the hero, like take two.
He wants to be the hero. He was the hero once. He saved Thebes once. Hey, second catastrophe, I gotta save Thebes again. Then if I might mention the next best thing, the third best, don't hold it back, say it. I still believe... Who's gonna solve the problems that people say?
Blind dude.
Oh, poor Oedipus. Because people say, well, go to Apollo. Apollo will solve everything. It's like, no, I'm not going to go to Apollo. Who should solve the situation? The people say, Tiresias. I still believe Tiresias sees with the eyes of Lord Apollo. Why are all these puns about seeing keep coming back with Tiresias?
Blind.
Yes, that's kind of tasteless, but yeah. Yeah, that's why there are all these puns about vision. Anyone searching for the truth, my king, might learn it from the prophet clear as day. I've not been slow with that. On Creon's cue, I've sent the escorts twice within the hour. I'm surprised he isn't here. So, while the chorus was singing their song, what was happening in the palace?
he was sending out messengers. The
And-
good people.
Why was he sending out messengers to Tiresias? Because Creon told him to. Now, presumably, why did Creon say, send messengers to Tiresias?
They wouldn't go to Apollo.
Maybe so he wouldn't go to Apollo? What are the possibilities we're dealing with the message from Creon at the beginning? Could he be telling the truth? Completely? Yes. Could this be a conspiracy? Yes. We don't have enough data either way. So, Creon says, get Tiresias, get Tiresias, get Tiresias. And as they're standing there waiting for Tiresias, what does Oedipus start to say to the people? How does he start talking about Tiresias to the people?
Accusing him?
Before Tiresias has even shown up. Like, as they're standing there waiting for Tiresias to show up, Oedipus says,
He didn't plunge in a murder. That one?
sorry?
When he says like he didn't plunge in a murder, he'll never plunge it in that one. Is that
What
you're
page? Oh, I'm
Right
sorry.
above what he wants.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I meant right as Tiresias comes in, not before he comes in. Yeah, so how, as Tiresias comes in for the first time, does Oedipus talk about him?
Crazy praise.
Yeah, he bigs him up. What are the powers he attributes to Tiresias? What does he say Tiresias is going to do as he's standing there looking at Tiresias on stage? As the people are there watching them.
He won't flinch?
No, that's when they're talking about the murderer, like on the next page.
Rescue himself, the city, Oedipus, everything infected by dead.
Yeah. He says, O Master of all of the mysteries of our life, all you teach and all you dare not tell, signs in the heavens, signs that walk the earth. Blind as you are, you can feel all the more what sickness haunts our city. You, my Lord, are the one shield, the one savior we can find. Why is this a crucial mistake on Oedipus' part? What's Tiresias about to say?
That he's the candidate.
He's about to say that Oedipus is the killer. So put yourself in Oedipus' place. What has Oedipus done? How does Oedipus made a horrible mistake here?
He's pretty much said that this is the only person that can tell us what's actually correct, and then
What
he
does
tells him
Oedipus not know?
that he's going to accuse him of killing him.
He has said Tiresias is the only person who knows anything on this stupid earth. He's the one savior we have. He doesn't know what Tiresias is about to say. And Tiresias is about to say, you did it, you incest, you're going down. Again, is that true or not? We don't know yet. But thinking of Oedipus as a leader, what mistakes has Oedipus made up until this point? As a leader who doesn't want to be overthrown, as a leader who's afraid of coups, what mistakes has he made? Who has he trusted he shouldn't have trusted? Creon. What would have been even better than sending Creon to Delphi? Going to Delphi. He didn't even send any independent witnesses with Creon. As far as he knows, how much of Creon's story could be made up?
100%.
100%. What other crucial mistakes has he made?
Made someone more powerful than him.
Made somebody more powerful than him, and somebody who, given how quickly their relationship deteriorates over the course of this conversation, how had Oedipus and Tiresias got on previously?
Not very well.
Not very well. So Oedipus is making mistakes left and right here. And Tiresias, after this beautiful introduction, master of the world, the only person who knows anything, he comes on stage with this all-powerful tyrant. And what does he start saying, Tiresias?
The truth sucks.
The truth sucks, boss. What else?
Let me go home.
Let me go home.
I wouldn't have said that to me.
Be polite. Who's he talking to? Who's Tiresias talking to? In relationship to Tiresias?
His king.
His king. He comes on stage talking to this king. And what are the things he says to his king?
F you.
F you. Like, what is going on here? Tiresias comes on stage glowing with attitude, just dripping hostility, and says, I fail to see that your own words are so well timed. I'd rather not have the same thing said of me. You send me home. You bear your burdens, I'll bear mine. like Mr. Attitude. He's being super rude to Oedipus. But what does he not do amidst all of this rudeness and saying, "Send me home, you horrible man. I don't want to tell you the truth."
He doesn't leave.
He doesn't leave. Why would he be so hostile and rude and say, "I want to go home, I want to go home, I want to go home," but refuse to go home?
Well, he can't see it again.
Well, he's got his friend, his helper, yeah.
He just has like some good info that he's gonna drop, and it's like building up. Yeah.
It's building up. What impression is Tiresias creating by saying, "I don't want to be here, I want to go home, I want to go home, I don't want to tell you, I don't want to tell you, you jerk"? It's building up suspense.
He's like, he's really reluctant to actually give that information.
He's making it look like it's being dragged out of him. Again, do we know, as the audience, if Tiresias is telling the truth or not? We don't know if Tiresias is genuinely prophesying or fake prophesying. We can't see in Tiresias' head. But again, Tiresias creates the impression that what he's saying he doesn't want to say. Andrew?
He's trying to,